Got it. Okay, we are live. We are live on Facebook.
Yay!
Yay. Okay, so I'm just gonna wait 50 seconds to have people jump in.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna introduce you and we're gonna start from there.
Okay.
Okie dokie.
I'm just going to let you guide it and kind of guide me where you want me to go. I have a tendency to ramble, just so you know.
That's what this platform is made for. The other day, I don't know if you saw the interview with Erin, but she went on a tangent, and you have to talk for 45 minutes. You go and talk for 45 minutes.
Yeah, what's supposed to come, I figure what's supposed to be said and come out, it comes out, will come out. So,
Yeah, that's your way of doing mediumship, in
Yeah,
your own
it
way
is.
of being a medium.
It is. It is. That's I don't discern well what I'm channeling, but some of it comes out and I'm like, that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I was literally thinking about that tonight, about how spirit really just wants to live with us without us being afraid or doubtful or skeptic, because they're already here. So
Absolutely. It's given me a lot of freedom because I'm like, just let it unfold. I'm going to surrender to you. Guide me where I'm supposed to be. So it frees up a lot of worry and control, and I can just kind of enjoy the ride, even the bumps.
right. Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's like it really makes you face your idea of perfection or of control. It's
Absolutely
forcing us to surrender. It's like there is no other way. Like, no matter how you want to get there, eventually you just have to surrender. Okay.
Exactly. That's the big one. Over and over and over and over and over. It becomes a way of life, the surrender.
Right. And I feel like, and I'm going to introduce you in a second, but I feel like I want to continue with this flow that we're talking about. I feel like death is that for people,
Absolutely.
for all of us.
Absolutely.
It's like you're accustomed to a certain way of being, of living, of having your loved ones around you, of thinking that you own them, or that you own them.
Yeah, or you have control over your life, and really it's just your thoughts and actions. And other than that, it's all left at what I believe. It's all left as a soul contract, is what I believe. That's my personal belief. So,
Right.
And then, God puts a stamp on it, and we come to learn to surrender, for sure.
Right. It's so interesting in how many ways we put in our life to learn to surrender. Is so through so many ways, through so many people, through so many lessons.
Absolutely. And it's all resistance, all contrast comes to, that's the bottom line. The bottom line lesson is to surrender. Right. Now there's a lot of nuances of learning and releasing in between that, but inevitably that's where it's all leading. So absolutely, we're in total alignment of that belief. So that's great.
Yeah, and what you said is actually super interesting, and it's what I was thinking, and thank you for putting it out there, because I forgot while I was saying it. So you're a very beautiful mirror already. But the resistance, it's like we want to resist, thinking that things are going to change in some way. You know what? No, I didn't want this, and I'm gonna resist. Okay, you can do whatever you want, but then you deal with the consequences of the feelings that come with that resistance. What if you surrender? It's pain. And yesterday I was listening to an interview, and this lady was saying we associate pain and love. The more I grieve, the more I suffer, the more I love. It's like, man, that sucks. It's like,
that's painful. That's one of the things that I teach my clients. I'm like, our emotional guidance system, the pain is actually telling us that we're separated from the truth. So the pain is saying your child is dead, and that's painful. And then the truth is saying your child is different, but not dead, and that feels peaceful. And the higher vibration emotions are the truthful emotions. Those are the ones that come with surrender. So yeah, it's such a tangled web, but once you find a way through it, then you can look back and you're like, oh, I made this so much harder than it had to be, all of it.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. But at the same time, what you were saying also is like you accept the bumps, you said, right? You accept the bumps.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I believe that that's true because sometimes we mess up big time. Sometimes, you know, we are at a certain level and then all of a sudden we are 10 steps behind or we go, no, behind, sorry, we go backwards. That's what I meant to say. And
Yeah,
we're
because
like,
it's
oh
ebb and
man,
flow. Yeah, it's always ebb and flow. And my biggest thing now is anytime I have contrast, like the bumps or the mistakes or the failures or whatever we want to label it as, any negative, seemingly negative experience, I just ask, what is it here to teach me? And it frees you into surrender after that point, because then you're like, oh, that's why that happened, right? Just like you were saying earlier, well, you shared the Zoom link, Nikki. That actually gave me an idea. There was purpose in it, even though to me, I was like, oops, you know.
right,
So as long as we can always find the purpose in the contrast, then really there is no contrast. It's just growth. So
right.
yeah.
I love that. When you were talking, you know what image came to my mind? And I surrendered to that image. I'm like, wow, this is very interesting. Um, the image of all the rivers that there are in the world,
Mhm.
they eventually will go in the ocean. They can
Yeah.
decide whether they want to go up to the mountains and then down and then through the valleys and then, you know, they can choose wherever they want to go, like the little drop of water can choose. But
Right.
eventually you need to mix with the ocean. It doesn't matter how much resistance you put and the stones and the bumps and everything. I was like, wow, that's a beautiful image. I love
Yeah. And
that.
eventually you're going to anyway. Like in the end all be all, you're going to eventually. So whether we surrender and make it easier and just flow with it, you know, and I'm human, so I still have times where I get stressed out and I'm like, ah, and then 2 days later I'm like, okay, this is just another level of surrender, Nikki. And I'm like, okay. And it's hard because that ego self wants to get into the play, you know, that ego self that comes with this body wants to get into play. And so that's part of what I teach in healing too, is like the awareness of the ego self that is the emotional guidance system while we're in a body, and how we can tame that and lead it into surrender. And boy, sometimes we have to drag it kicking and screaming.
Jeez. Yes. Oh my goodness. No, please don't get stuck on me. She froze. Okay, let's wait for her to come back. And hello everybody. So while we wait for her to come back, I am going to introduce tonight's guest to everybody. Her name is Nikki Elliott, and she is a spiritual grief guide, a behavior modification implementer, and we're going to ask her what that means in a second. I'm introducing you, Nikki, meanwhile.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm already freezing up. Our
Oh, it's
internet
good.
here is wonky, always wonky.
It's good. It's good. Everything is perfect in divine order, so that's fine.
Exactly. So,
So I was saying that you are a behavior modification implementer, and you're gonna go into that for us in a second. And then you are the founder
yeah,
and leader of Healing Warrior Parents. I'm here reading your description, and Warrior Parents United. I'm not gonna read the little number because I'm just not going to. But that's who Nikki is, and here she is tonight with us. Thank you for being here, Nikki.
thank you for having me, Sylvia. It's an honor, always an honor.
Awesome. Okay, so I actually wanted to start by asking you, what is behavior modification implementer?
So, in my professional life, what I did was I worked in the public education system as part of a behavior program for like high risk children who had trauma. They had trauma, and so they had oftentimes violent traumatic response behavior, and they couldn't be mainstreamed into a mainstream classroom because of that. So we worked in a very small um, program that centered on behavior modification. We integrated obviously their mainstream curriculum, as well as emotional intelligence classes, cognitive behavior therapy, neurolinguistic programming. A lot of times it was ABA therapy as well. So those are all very basic foundational therapy modalities that can be used to help rewire neural pathways in the human brain to different perspectives, different behaviors, different reactions, different responses. And I'm so thankful for that part in my life, because then when my son passed, I took these things and I started using them on myself. So what happened was it kind of divinely unfolded that I kind of curated this mind, body, spirit thing that I was doing on myself to find leaf and then also work with the physiology and neuroplasticity of my brain. Um, and so I was using like literal the spirit stuff, the actual physiology of the body, and then of course the mind came into play too. So that's what a behavior modification implementer does. We work with the fact that the words have power, that you are rewiring your neural pathways in your brain when you say instead of I'm broken forever, when we start to say I'm healing, I'm putting my effort into healing, that starts to shift the neural pathways in your brain. And that is the physiological part of grief healing. It's the actual physical part that we can do in the grief healing. So that's what that piece means, basically. It's rewiring, you know, using the neuroplasticity of the brain to rewire our perspective, really, and our response. Now it's not a light switch by any means. It's a process, and you still have to go through the grief, and that has a very one of the most profound tools in your healing is your grief. But it's definitely not, for me, it was not a place that I could stay. It was not a place that I could stay. So yeah.
Wow. You are actually made me realize something that my mom tells me all the time, which is we do in terms of job, in terms of life stuff, what we need to receive. So you were saying that thank God you studied all of that, because then you had to put it into practice in your life. And
Absolutely.
you made me reflect, because I'm like, I am here. Well, the first thing that I'm doing is to connect with spirit, because I was telling a lady, a friend of mine today, that when I was little, I was terrified of the idea of losing my mom. I was terrified because she was 43 when she had me. So when I was, little, she was already older than all the other moms. And um, so I was terrified. And now we have this beautiful connection that as being created thanks to physical distance. So
Right.
that was needed. And we went through the grief process. And now I'm noticing that basically I wrote it here because I'm like, I cannot forget this. So we do what we need to receive. So I'm trying to connect with spirit because I wanted to receive that connection because I was afraid of losing my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And now I am interviewing people that talk about their grief journey. And I had this epiphany, this revelation that I will eventually have to put into practice everything that I am reviewing and remembering through all these mirrors that I am interviewing at some point in my grief journey.
Absolutely.
Remember to go through it in a smoother way, right? That's why I feel
Yeah.
like this is happening.
That makes perfect sense. And
Yeah.
because I can look back on my life now, and I've had a lot of contrast in my life. So I can look back now and I see literally where every piece fits now into the puzzle. And I know exactly why I went through everything, why I was guided to everything that I've done in my life, professionally or otherwise, the relationships, I know why all of it was there. And now I'm in a place where I can give gratitude for all of that, even the seemingly negative pieces, because that set me up for the resilience and tenacity I had to be able to move forward in this big piece of contrast, the shattering, right? So yeah. And I think that is very telling. And everything that you are doing, you're going to be able to take and use when you do have when you experience your shattering and your grief journey. Absolutely. Absolutely. I 100% believe that.
And it's interesting because when you are going through those moments that are negative, dark, very hard, it's hard for you to see what you're saying, that eventually you're going to be grateful. And eventually, not only you're going to be grateful, like you're truly going to change your entire understanding of life and your connection with spirit. And it's like, in order to get there, there is a price. And the price, if we can call it like that, is the journey, and living the journey for what it is, surrendering every single step of the journey, and reminding one another to surrender so that
Right.
we can go back home. Right? It's like reminding all the rivers, like, hey, eventually you're gonna go there, you know?
Absolutely. I kind of look at it literally as, I do believe in reincarnation. So I look at it as kind of like we write out these scripts, right? We write out these scripts, and all of the things that we put in the script is inevitably going to lead us back home so we can write another script. So, and it is, people do look at it as well, what a price to pay, like what a price to pay. But really, when you step into a full paradigm shift, which takes a very long time and a lot of work, when you're talking about the physical loss of somebody that you love, your entire assumptions, the underlying assumptions of these fundamental things that you thought were this way, they completely become something different. So, there's a lot of entitlement and grief. And I was entitled in my grief when my son first left body. I will tell you, I was like, this is my dead kid card. I need to get to move to the front of the line at every grocery store, every amusement park, But now, to me, it's not been a price at all. It's definitely not been a sacrifice for him. He loves his afterlife. He's still ornery as ever. He's in total bliss. He has no contrast. So it's definitely not a sacrifice for him. And now where I'm at, because it's really made me transcend so much stuff, and I have such freedom and less worry, and I'm extremely authentic now. Like, that's not a price to me. It's not a price to pay anymore. Like, that's the gold. Like, that's the gold on earth, right? That's the gold we get in surrender before we leave our body, to go back to where all the gold is, you know.
That's
So yeah,
that's the goal, to be who you are without having to try to be someone else. And in order to get there, there is interesting. There is a journey. There is a journey.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's a hard, excruciating journey. We just hit 5 years, so I'm 5 years out of Leaf leaving his body. I say that, or I say hop the veil sometimes. Sometimes I'll say dead, just because it's kind of such a flippant word for me now, because it's so not what we think it is, right? And he often makes fun of that word now. So that word doesn't bother me anymore. Where in my first 2 years, it was very bothersome. So I tried on a lot of different words. But to me, like, when he left his body feels more accurate to me now than the word dead. So that's usually what I say. But like 5 years out, because in the grief community, one of the things we hear a lot is, like you were saying earlier, grief is the price of love. Grief is not the price of love. Grief is not what connects you to your beloved. It's a huge tool for moving you through that, to getting used to having the physical gap, right? But once you find your people in spirit, and I believe that everybody can find their people in spirit, right? And forge this new relationship. It's a different relationship, but it's so expansive, and it becomes so much more intimate, because you don't have all the, pardon my French, but you don't have all the bullshit getting in the way, clogging up the love. It's like the true teacher of what unconditional love is, and how expansive that is. And that is magical and mystical and beautiful, you know. But getting to that point is like trudging through the depths of hell a lot of the time. It was extremely painful. And that's why I always tell people, like, this is not a light switch. It is definitely a process. It is definitely a journey. And it's one, like you and I talked about earlier, like, it takes learning to surrender. And sometimes it's every single moment you have to resurrender. And it takes finding your deeper truth, stepping outside of the box of what you've been programmed to believe or been indoctrinated to believe. I mean, it is right. It can be a little intense a lot of the time.
Mm,
But there's so much joy that lives at the end of it, because grief and joy does not coexist in my life. I don't mourn leaf, I don't grieve leaf, and I've made people mad because I say I don't miss my son. I don't miss him though, because I have him more available now. I mean, now he would be 22 in body, right? I have him more available now than if he were in his body, because he's gonna be like, oh, that's my mom. Decline. I'll call her back later. Now he's just like, what do you need, mama? I'm right here. So, I do have him more readily, and he minds so much better now. Like, I don't have to hear his lip or his attitude, because he doesn't have that part anymore. So, but that sometimes is off-putting to people, because so I always try to say, well, you have to understand, like, I have a very palpable daily relationship with him. And it's because I've opened my awareness. I've learned to surrender. I've learned to step outside the box. I've learned to rewire my brain from that leaf is dead and gone to, oh, leaf is different and here and available. So, yeah.
mm. It's interesting how it's hard for us to believe that everything starts with believing. If you
It is.
believe that you are separated, there is nothing, nobody, never, ever, ever in your life that is going to make you believe the opposite, that you're actually connected. If you think that I am a medium and you are not a medium, there is no way for you to, or you were frozen, okay. There is no way for you to become something that you do not believe that you are.
Exactly.
So it's so
Exactly.
important what you're saying, which is to rewire the brain to think differently, even like getting outside. And it's not necessarily like the opposite. For example, I'm saying this because I'm feeling like saying this, so I'm just gonna say this, like, not, oh, but this cannot be fixed. This grief is not fixable. I'm not saying to say yes, it is fixable. I'm not saying like to say the opposite of the same sentence, but using a total different sentence, to begin with. Like, I'm not even thinking about fixing. I'm thinking about, what do I want to do? Do I want to survive? What do I choose to do? Or do I want to thrive? Because when you said thriving after the loss of a child, I'm like, that's a big word. It's not just like
It's a big
survive.
scary, yeah, it's a big scary word, and it can be off-putting to especially parents that are new in their journey. They're like, she's, because in our society we're taught to stuff it down and pretend. So I know there have to be so many people that are like, she is so pretending, like she's ignoring it, she stuffed it down. I really haven't, like, and I didn't set out with the intention of thriving either,
Right.
right? I mean, this became something that I did literally sometimes one moment to the next moment to the next moment. And at first it was like, it was, I wanted to leave, right? I wanted to complete my time here. I wanted to take an exit point. And I have a daughter, and I have a partner, and of course I have parents and friends, and I knew that uh, mostly I had to stay for my daughter and my partner. Like, I couldn't leave to go be with Leaf, right? This was very early on. And so I had to figure out where he was. I had to figure out where he was. And if I could at least get to the point where I could survive, right, then it would be okay. So I did all this work, and I was very obsessive about it. And I learned to connect, and I learned to have him in my awareness, and I learned to balance my grief at that point with learning to connect, because it became very apparent to me that the more I could get up and out of me as far as the grief went. And I mean, I'm an ugly crier, Sylvia. So I could be in the grocery store and I'd hit the ground and I'd be screaming and crying. I'd have to be picked up and carried out,
Wow.
the whole grief scene. Um, I didn't eat for 8 months hardly, because I lost my appetite. I had to have help being showered. Like, I was not functioning. So I was very much down in the muck and the darkness. But what I was realizing even in that was the more I let that come up and out without taking it on as an identity for myself, the more room it was making inside of me to become more aware of Leaf and to become more connected with Leaf. So one thing that I tell my clients, I'm like, man, I will always cheer you on and you're crying, like kick and scream and cuss and cry and, get the snotty tears going and all of it, because you're purging pain out of your spiritual self and your physical self. And you're actually opening up space for this love, that it's the love that connects you. And you're opening up space for this love to become expansive, you know? And so when they start doing this, they can start to actually see that, oh, it's not the grief that connects me to my child. It is the love. And the grief is a byproduct of that love, but it's not the end all be all. So I got to where I finally was surviving, and Leaf was very much leading the way. And I was working with the archangels is who I learned to work with when I was connecting. And I had just come into this, boy howdy, it probably looked like crazy surrender to outside people, I'm sure, because I'm like, what? All right, just whatever's supposed to happen is going to happen. And my son made it clear that we were to move to Florida from Southwest Missouri, and on a whim and a literal wing and a prayer, me and my boyfriend, my partner, loaded up our old car with our dogs and our clothes, and we came to Florida. And when I got to Florida, I started to thrive, like, because I just went, I'm handing it over to all of you. And they unfolded my coaching business. And I love my life. I love my life because I've been able to surrender it over to spirit and look at my contrast here as my school, part of my growth. It's all happened for me instead of as punishment to me. And that's how I stepped into thriving very unknowingly, right? But it was in full faith and trust in my child, really, more than anything at that point. So thriving is possible. It takes a lot of work. It's exhausting. I mean, I won't lie. There were days I was in bed for 7 days because I was just tapped. I was tapped from the pain.
I need to stop you here because
Yeah.
I need to say this. You said that it's because of your child that you did this. These children, and I'm saying this because I'm expecting one, and I was very aware as to what I asked God before I realized that I was pregnant. I asked God, okay, I've done a couple of years or 1 year of giving readings and sessions. Okay. I don't know, is mediumship what I'm supposed to be doing? I need a mentor. Can you give me a mentor? Can you give me a teacher? And then I was thinking, human teachers, they have biases and everything. I want somebody that is really going to show me how to connect with the spirit world, really showing me how to connect with my essence, really making me understand what the purpose of life is. And that's when I discovered that I was expecting the teacher.
Yeah.
And I realized that this girl, I connect with my contemporaries mainly, like people around my age from the other side, mainly people that have taken their life because of suicide and overdose. And it's because of the fact that I mirrored that and they mirrored it back to me. But what this girl told me once, I suggested to her mom during a session, you need to contact this other mom because you and her are doing the same thing. They're fighting for mental health. One is doing it at a very, very small stage because her daughter just transitioned, and the other one is at a national, international level. So I remember putting them in contact. I don't know if they're going to be listening to this, but I was hearing this woman's daughter telling me my mom was not listening to me while I was there, and she still doesn't listen to me. And I was like, I cannot say that to her. Like, do you want me to have her have a heart attack? And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, I can surrender to that voice, which is the voice of spirit. But the interesting part here is that what you're telling me is a validation for what I experienced, which is they, either whether they're here or on the other side of the veil, they're still our teachers.
Absolutely.
We think that we are theirs, but they are trying to show us what we really want, which is remembering how to connect with spirit.
Exactly. And when they're not embodied, they have the broader perspective. So, I would tell Leaf, I'm like, well, you finally actually do know more than me now. He was 16 when he left body. He is a know-it-all 16-year-old boy. And it was a constant like, Leaf, like I'm the mom. Like, just listen to me. And now I'm like, well, you showed me, didn't you? You do know more than me now.
Yeah.
So, and something I wanted to touch on too, Sylvia, you said earlier, you were talking about belief. And one of the things that I tell people in my group, or I tell my private clients, is that we move from severe darkness, right? Total hopelessness, to then we are led to people that will at least plant a seed of hope. And we move from hope to belief into knowing. And when you can start living in your knowing, which is living in your deepest personal truth, right? About spirit, about death, about afterlife, about your own journey, about all of it. When you have the broader perspective while you're in a physical body, that's when you're living in your knowing. And that's where thriving starts to happen, because you're no longer it's no longer a belief. It is, it with literally every fiber of your physical human being and beyond that, right? So not only are you getting connected with spirit, you're reconnecting with your own inner spirit, which is what we all are in a body, right? So, I mean, it's people say now, we do a lot of gratitudes and affirmations in our group because of the vibrational, lift that can have, and the neurolinguistic programming effect that can have on the neural pathway. And sometimes I say, like, I'm grateful for my shattering, and they'll say, like, what? You're great. And I'm like, I am grateful for my shattering. There has been no separation. I get to decide on the amount of the gap between my son and I. And so when you have that total perspective shift that takes a while, you definitely can thrive, and you can live life on your terms. You learn to set boundaries. You learn to have very blatant, don't mince the words conversations. Like the girl in spirit saying, my mom's not listening to you. And you're like, do I have to say that to her? You know what? Sometimes, and it can be scary, but sometimes, especially people in deep grief, sometimes they need to hear the hard stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes they need to hear that cut and dry. Yeah, your daughter is saying you're not listening to you, or and there are times that in my group I say the hard stuff, and it is off-putting to some people, but those are the people not ready to receive the message yet, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Doesn't mean I won't hold their hand until they're ready to receive it, but we move from hope to belief to knowing. And when you get into your knowing, that's where full surrender comes in, and that's where thriving happens, truly. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful, magical thing.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow, you're right. Sometimes and that's why I believe that some of us decide to work with these people, because we are actually learning to be authentic and to go and be straightforward, so that
Absolutely,
we can embody the example. We can embody the surrender, because surrender is such a abstract concept. But then when you start embodying it, when you start embodying the spirit that you are, completely freeing yourself completely from the barriers, that's when people see something. They cannot put a word on it sometimes, but they see something in you, and they say, different things. And then you're trying to tell them, you can get here as well. Let me take your hand. Let me try to find a way for you, because it's going to be different for you than for somebody else.
Right.
That's what where the embracing of the bumps is, because as a medium, it's like every time I do this process, should I say this? Should I not say this? You know, how much can I say? I don't trust this. You know, it's the same exact process. And I
It
believe
is.
that we all choose different routes. But again, going back to the main point, we always are trying to get there, which is a connection with the inner spirit, which eventually at the end is what we're trying to do
Absolutely.
and get to, because they are around us, but they are within us.
Yeah.
The connection is there.
And that's what it is. I call it a spirit to spirit relationship, right? Because I believe like when we come into the body, our spirit comes into the body, but with our physical body, we also have an ego self, right? So we have this emotional guidance system like we talked about before. And so it when we start strengthening our spiritual muscle within us that's kind of laid dormant because of our programming and the physical world around us, right? When we start strengthening our own spirit, we step into our awareness, and that's when the connection gets like, whoa, right? So, and taming the ego self, that's where the doubt comes from. That's just part of being human. So, especially when you're talking about working with the unseen, right? Because you're told, oh, you're crazy. Like, oh, Sylvia's crazy. Sylvia's doing her mediumship again or whatever. But you're starting to live in your knowing. I live in my knowing with Leaf. Um, um, Sometimes I don't live in my knowing. It's just occurred to me this week that I'm an intuitive grief guide. I've always said I'm a spiritual grief guide. I'm like, oh, I'm intuitive. That's what it is. It's my inner spirit connecting. And that's why I'm channeling some of this. Like I've been doing this for 2 years and it never occurred to me. And I had a friend who is also a client sometimes say, well, Nikki, I can sit in class and watch you, and it doesn't matter where anybody's at on their journey, even if it's a different journey from you, you know exactly what resource to put in front of them. You know exactly what words they need to say, they need to hear to have a shift. And I'm like, oh, and she was like, you're intuitive in that way. And I was like, I never thought of it like that. So that was like a epiphany for me this week, where I was disconnected and I couldn't articulate what was going on. But it's spirit to spirit. And it you know, I will tell you, Sylvia, I would not go back and change it. I wouldn't, that's full surrender is when I can say, I'm grateful for my journey instead of saying, I'm grateful for my journey, but I wish Leaf hadn't died. I can now say, I'm grateful for my journey with him. Um,
Mm,
and that is total, full on 100% surrender. So, and
mm,
I live there 99.9% of the time, truly.
mm.
And I just want other parents to know that that's possible, because I didn't start out the journey like, I'm going to find a way to survive this and surrender and overcome this, because you feel a lot of guilt as a bereaved parent when you start your healing journey, because society so perpetuates this. If you heal, you did not love your child as much, right? You didn't love your child as much as those that are going to stay in deep grief, because that's what connects you. And so there's a bit of it's lessening now, thank God, but there's a bit of a stigma to healing when you're talking about being a bereaved parent. There truly is. you
Mm,
know we can
mm.
kind of get judged harshly on it sometimes.
Yeah, and it's like it's because that's the real challenge, like staying with your belief among people that don't share your belief and keep
Yeah.
on trying to tell you that your belief of being okay with the fact that you transition, because at the end of the day, you don't know what the future uh, would have hoped for him,
Yes. Yeah.
had in store for him. Maybe we would have had to amputate one of his legs and
Right.
be disabled for an entire life, or have an
Oh,
accident and be in coma.
yeah, exactly. And here's one of the things that I tell them, because I have actually had people say, you love your child less than I love mine because you're okay now. I'm like, wait a minute. You're operating from a flawed perspective, because really, as parents, and you're with child, so you understand this, right? As parents, all we want for our children is to have literal bliss in their lives, to have the least amount of negative experience, to have everything they want at their fingertips, to be, happy and joyful. And my son has that. Like, my son has that now. Who am I to say or put an expectation on how he gets that? He
Mm,
has that now. So there's nothing that I could want possibly for him that he doesn't have at his fingertips right now, right?
mm.
So I try to reframe it that way. And again, it takes a while to get to that shift, right? It took me a while to get to that shift, but and he's great grief guide, right? So he brought a lot of this to me too, like, mom, like, I have everything you could have ever wanted for me here. And you're exactly right about that. I thought about that, especially when you're talking about bereaved parent guilt and the survivor's guilt and the I should have saved them, I should have known, coulda, shoulda, woulda, coulda, shoulda, woulda. That it comes on harsh and it comes on strong and it comes on fast and it just hits you in the back of the head. And it was actually my mother, because Leaf went to a party and he drank too much alcohol. And I said, I knew he was drinking. I should have went and got him, should have made him come home. And she was actually the one that said, Nikki, what if you had? What if you had went and got him and drug him to the car and you're driving home and he grabbed the wheel and the car flipped and he died while you were driving? She said, where would that have put you? And it really, even that early on, was such a huge shift for me, because I was like, oh my God, she's completely right. Like, and then further out, I came to the realization that, like, we have this, as humans with this ego self, we have this thing where we want to save people. We want to save the sick people in the hospital. We want to save. And we're operating under the assumption, and it, um, that earth is like the end all be all, right? Like, being in the body is the greatest thing ever. When truly, when the person gets to leave their body and go back home, they're in paradise at that point. So I started really deconstructing a lot of these social things that had been taught to me about saving people and what guilt looked like and where all of that came from. And it was this huge, long process of literally deconstructing, reconstructing, rewiring, and a lot of learning. And part of what I do is I try to get these resources, like, find as many teachers as you can with as many different perspectives, and learn to see and learn to lean into the awareness of the pieces that bring you peace, because those are the pieces that are your truth.
Mm.
And then you build on your truth and you keep walking and you keep doing it and you keep doing it and you keep doing it. So it's quite intense, but it is such an
It's
amazing journey.
incredible. It's what you're saying is incredible. It's really like what all of us are here to learn.
Yes,
Like, basically become, and this is the title of a course that eventually I want to create. Maybe we can co-create it together. But the
absolutely.
title is Become the CEO of Your Own Spirituality. I
Yes,
That's what I understand, that at the end of the day I need to get to, if I want to work as whatever, in this case as a medium. I need to get there. I need to have my own belief system. And in order to have your own belief system, you have to understand what is that you decide to believe. It needs to be an active choice. It cannot be a
absolutely.
programming or an indoctrination anymore.
Absolutely. And you can find that by, I was reading sometimes and listening to stuff sometimes, Sylvia, for sometimes 17 hours a day. Like, people were worrying about me, like, oh my gosh, she's obsessed. I'm like, damn right I'm obsessed. Like, this is do or die here, people. Like, this is do or die.
Yes.
And so, um, and I was just writing, like, manically writing. And these are actual assignments that I give people in my classes now, right? I run a class called Deeper Truth, and I put all of this information in front of them. I say, I want you to pull out the parts that make you feel peaceful, because peace is truth. And that means it resonates with your inner spirit. And so we're forming on paper, right? We're writing all these pieces down. And afterwards, they have these papers they can look at and they're like, oh my God, I didn't even know I believed that. But now I read it, all these pieces from all these different teachers, and they're like, I 100% believe that. And some of them will say, and this is how I felt, is that I almost remember it. Like, I remember it. right? I remember now that that's what I believe. So that's when they bring in their resonance of their knowing of their own spirit from before they came into the body, and they got the earth amnesia, or it got indoctrinated out of them, or it got programmed out of them. So it's really it's an amazing thing to witness, and I'm extremely honored every time I get to watch this. I mean, you can almost just see it. Their light just goes bing, and then they have hope. That's when the hope starts, right?
Mm,
They start to understand deeper truth, and it can be intense.
mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, what you make me think is what becoming a medium means. One of the techniques is to unfold your senses, right?
Mhm.
So you have to, for example, pay attention to details. And I would go around and just look at people and just trying to remember the features, or when they introduce themselves, just try to remember their name, just look at them, establish a connection. So becoming aware, being present in order to be present and see what is actually going on, because usually our mind is always somewhere else. So it's bringing that presence back over and over through these exercises, right? Um, and I was literally thinking about this today again, that it's about paying attention to the subtle thing that's going on, the subtle
Yes,
thought,
always.
because the other thoughts are louder.
Hmm.
And you think, oh, I think this, which means that it's true. It's not
Right,
necessarily that equation. Like, just because I'm thinking this, why am I not questioning this? And
right.
I understand when you say that you were obsessed, because I was obsessed. There was a moment, especially during the pandemic, I would listen to audiobooks back to back to back to back to back to back to back. All the mediums that are on YouTube, all the books that are out there, I was obsessed. And any conversation was about that, because to me, it's like, I'm discovering something here. Like, there is something
Exactly.
exciting here.
It's like, I mean, it's like rebirth. It feels like rebirth, right? And I love that you brought up being present, because that is one of the things that I had to very much train myself to do, is to stay present. And Louise Hay, I love Louise Hay, and she said, the point of power is in the present moment. And I was always like, I don't understand what that means. I so understand what that means now, because when we're on the hamster wheel in the brain and the brain and the brain, especially when you're talking about connecting to spirit, where with me, obviously, I'm talking about, I work with spouses too, but majority is bereaved parents. So, and in the grief of that anyway, it's so detrimental to learn to stay present. And you literally have to retrain yourself to do it, like, oh, every moment, right? And you're grounding and looking around and doing 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounds, right? To get back in your body, because if not, you're reliving this trauma.
Hmm.
And every time you're reliving this trauma, you're digging the neural pathway deeper, deeper, deeper. And so learning to stay present became a point of literally minute to minute survival for me. And thank God for that, right? And so I started staying present. And when I was present is where Leaf could come into my awareness. If my brain was running back here in the past or worrying about the future, he's just going to keep tapping on me, going, Mom, 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 Mom,
Hmm.
Mom. If I'm present enough to be aware of the subtle nuances that are happening around me, right? Then I can see him. That's when I can get communication. That's when I can see signs. That's when I can be still enough to have telepathy with him and hear him and discern him from my own thoughts, right? That's when I can feel his energetic touch on my physical body. But if my brain is on the constant hamster wheel, I'm missing all of that. And it's like slamming a door in his face. So
Hmm.
that is one of the biggest gifts of this journey. Um, Even when I'm not, because I don't initiate communication with Leaf now. I did at first, but then he hit 18 years old, and I was like, okay, Mama's going to try to give you a few free days, because I know if you were in body, you would be like, Mom, come on now. So I let him rendezvous with me. I told him I just need a check in, once every few days. So he'll hit me with a sign or a communication every few days, but I don't sit down and have to like automatic write with him or meet him in meditation or use my divination tools with him anymore. But at first I did. And so, I'll be out now. I've learned to meld both paradigms in together now. So And I know it all, the spirit to spirit communication, it all happens in the synchronicity and the orchestration, and all of that is very subtle, right? So I know when I'm out and about during my day that, if I get nudged to look to the right and there's a license plate that says, hey, mom, I'm like, oh, hey, buddy. And we have our moment, and then I keep going about my day. So it's really great when you learn to kind of integrate both of them, and you can play in both paradigms throughout your day without having to set and intentionally do that. As a medium, you have to set and intentionally do that, obviously. But since I'm not working as a medium, I don't have to do that. So it's nice to let bereaved parents know that eventually it won't always feel like you're losing your mind, right? Because you have to be up in the spirit world 24/7. You can actually come back down into your body on earth and learn to be just as close. So it's kind of a neat process, that part of it. It's a further out process, but it is a neat process.
Right. And I mean, I actually had to change the way that I do mediumship, because I realized that they would show up, like my friends would show up while I was doing something else during the day. And I'm like, I need to message your mom right now. Okay, I'm messaging your mom right now. And that was the sign through me for them, because they knew that they needed it in that moment. Because sometimes you have an appointment at 5 with me, but that's not when you're ready to receive whatever. So I had to surrender to that, because I'm like, no, I want my readings to be this way, to bring the evidence this way. And they're like, oh, she's still not understanding. Okay, all right.
She's still not surrendering.
Yeah,
I get it. Leaf will still, and I know that time is a man-made thing and linear time is here, right? So he would, and he doesn't do it very often now, but he would at first wake me up at night. And I finally told him, I'm like, dude, we have time here and your mama needs her sleep. It is 3 a.m. Like, I know you don't have time there, but I need you to respect the earth timeline here, bub. Like, mama's tired. She needs her rest because this grief is exhausting. So he doesn't wake me up at 3 a.m. very much anymore. He's an ornery boy, so he still does. But there for a while, I had to have a talk with him, and I'm like, I have to set a boundary with you. Like, I love you, and I know you're not dead now, so you need to let me sleep. You need to let my body rest when it's resting. Which is a far cry from where I started. And I'm like, please just come at any time, anywhere, anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
And it can sound weird from the outside,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody around me, of course, for a very long time thought I was having a psychotic break. And, I was just like, think what you want. It's making my pain less. And then I've been told it's a good coping mechanism for grief, right? And that one can still get my goat a little bit, but I'm just like, bless your heart.
Yeah.
Bless your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's either wishful thinking or a good way to pretend that, and that's the challenge that I think that we have to really face, right?
It is.
Sorry. And it makes me think about Jesus, and about how really 2000 years later, we're still trying to believe that we can really do what he did and more, and that he was a healer and a medium to degrees that are very hard for us to understand. Apparently it's taking us as a consciousness, it's taking us a long time. We're still trying to fight over the religious aspect rather than trying to go to the essence of what the message
every
was.
single religion is saying. They're all saying the same thing. They're just using different languages and different verbiage, and so I get it. I do believe we are in a shift of that, obviously, because this is becoming more acceptable. It is becoming more mainstream. So that's good news, but you're right. My God, it has taken a long time,
And I mean, I was there, and I believe that you were there as well. So it's like, for me, when you say like, I'm grateful for the dark times, I'm like, I am grateful too, because it feels like 2 lifetimes ago. So why would I not be grateful for the advancement and the progress that I made in a moment in which now feels like lifetimes ago? It's like, of course.
Yeah. And you know what I found is when I can come into full gratitude for those instances. That's when that whole situation flips. Like, say a bad relationship, when I can come into a full surrender of that and be like grateful for the growth that I had, that's when it shifts, the energy of it shifts. And then I have this person coming back to me and saying, I want to make amends to you because I really put you through a lot. And I'm like, what? Like, I would have never expected that. So once you do surrender, the contrast, the energy of that contrast completely changes and the whole thing flips. And it's crazy. It feels crazy sometimes, but it's amazing too, you know? So
It
it is. It's, I always say I'm thankful for this wild, wild, crazy ride because it has been one. It has definitely been one, you
yeah,
know?
but it's incredible, like where you get. It's like it's very hard to find a metaphor, honestly, or an analogy that can really help us understand the different level of consciousness, because I haven't experienced all of them either,
Right.
but I have experienced lower levels of consciousness that people would
Definitely.
never ever think in their lifetime, because they don't know me. They see what they see now, thinking that that's what I was and that's what I've always been, or that it was like this, the change,
Right.
um but it's like trying to tell somebody from the top of the mountain, or closer to the top of the mountain, to come up and look at the landscape there,
Absolutely.
because it's going to be different. It's very hard for us, um, to give an idea of what this might feel like. And what you were saying earlier, I feel it's very important, like, to make this point again. And I just actually wanted to come back and ask anybody that is watching or listening, if you have any questions, just feel free to leave a comment here, and I will ask Nikki. I will read the questions to Nikki. It's very hard for us to get to what you said, which is basically reverse thinking. You're thinking in reverse. So why are you suffering if you know where your child is or your loved one is? You know how they are, and you know who they are with.
Mhm.
You know that your child is alive and is fine. You know how your child is. It's good. It's safe. It's at peace. Finally left this dense body and all the risks and worries that come with it. And then you know that your child is with, who knows, your ancestors, all the loved ones that have already transitioned, more friends. So if your child is well and you want for your child the best of the best, then doesn't make sense that you're suffering so much. So what's the real reason to this, or reasons, right, plural, to
Mhm.
that suffering? And it's as simple as, and as complex as, the way that we have been conditioned to think.
Absolutely. It is.
It's
Absolutely.
that.
And it's you nailed it. It is as simple as that and as complex as that. And I have like spiritual people that had a deeper truth that have come to me and they're like, Nikki, I don't understand why I'm hurting so bad when I do know all of this. And I said, well, here's the deal. You're still in a human body. Your spirit's still in a human body. And you're programmed to think that all of this dense, slow vibrating energy that we see as things being still around us is reality. And so we do still have to grieve the physical reality, right? Because that is, like it or not, that is the reality we're planted in right at this time, right? So I tell them, grieve that physical reality, grieve that expectation of that condition that you set. And then as you heal, right, you can move into unconditional love, because a body is the biggest condition we've set on our love. And we're not even aware of it until somebody leaves it, right?
Mm.
So it actually moves us into the expansiveness of pure unconditional love, because the body, the physical reality is taken out of it at that point. But boy, howdy, we have a hell of a time grieving that to get to that point of surrender and understanding, you know, and not everybody can. And like you said, there are different levels of consciousness, not just within ourselves through any given point in our life, but also different people. So I believe that I truly believe I've probably done child loss in several lifetimes. And I believe that I learned a little bit in each lifetime. At this time, I was like, dang, that hurts. And so I'm going to bring back all of that knowledge. I'm going to figure out where all that knowledge is that I learned in each little piece. Every time I've done it, I'm going to blam, like this time I'm going to get it right. So when I work with people that that can only seem to get so far in their healing, I have to extend grace and be like, you know what? Maybe they haven't done this as many times as I have. And I've never had a past life regression or any of that. This is just intuitively what I feel, like what has been brought to me. And so I'm like, maybe this is as much about healing and unconditional love as they're supposed to learn in this given, time space reality that they have this time. And that's as far as I can guide them to it, because otherwise I was having a problem. Like, I want everybody to get into thriving mode, and not everybody can get there. It has to be a personal choice, and you have to make a commitment to work at it, right? So I think the different areas of like levels of consciousness, what you were talking about earlier, I think it plays very much into how far a person can choose to go in their healing and their expansion as well. Most definitely. And I think that's why we see so many people, that some people do take on that grief identity and they can't get very far in their healing. Maybe it's the first incarnation they've done child loss. I don't know. Maybe it's the fifth. I think I probably done it thousands of times for me to have been like, oh, that makes sense, writing it down. Okay, and then to deconstruct and reconstruct everything, as well as my background with behavior modification, right? So my pieces I made sure my pieces were going to come together this time if I was
Right.
going to do it again.
Right. I feel
Oh,
you. Yes. I always say, you know what? I realized at some point in the journey that I asked God, or I told God or
yeah,
creator or whomever, I'm going back. But this time, no matter what happens, I don't care. Whatever needs to happen for me to wake myself up, I let it happen. I'm okay with that because I don't want to go back another lifetime and wasting it or not using
right,
it the way that I could
right,
with all the
right.
potential.
Right. Well, and a driving force of mine in the very beginning, it's kind of a joke for me now, but the driving force me in the very beginning, I would say, on the off chance that I had to come back here, like, I'm going to learn everything I can from this, because I'm not doing this particular journey again. Like, so my two main driving forces were I needed to find Lee, and I was going to be damned if I came back here and did this again. So I was going to learn and expand everything I could to do it. And now where I'm at is like, and this is going to sound really far out there, Sylvia, but I again, and know probably even more quickly.
Wait a
Um,
second, you froze for like 5 seconds. Right after you said this is gonna sound, you froze. So go
oh,
back
okay.
again.
So this is going to sound really far out there, right? So looking back, um, I I can now say, with knowing what I know, that if I do have to do child loss again, I know that I will come into my knowing sooner of that there has been no end. There has been no separation. So it doesn't scare me anymore. And I had to look at that because I have a daughter still in body, right? And of course, when you have a second,
Disappeared again, but we're here waiting for you.
in my back,
Yes, now you're back.
goodness.
So
So
you were
I had,
saying you have a daughter here.
yes. So I had to look at the fact that, what if she dies before me? What is that going to look like? Because I have friends that have several kids in spirit. And and now it's to the point where, um unless she is further along in her life, and secure and has her own family, then I would almost rather go and leave body before me, simply because I don't want her navigating the earth plane without my guidance here, right? And people think that's nuts too. I know what it sounds like. It sounds insane, but because I know what I know now, I'm not scared of that, because I know that she and I will have just as close a relationship as Leaf and I. And then next time, if I come back to do this again, I'm not scared of it anymore, because I have such a deep understanding of what it is in the complexities of spirit and the unseen and afterlife. And so that truth, I live in that truth extremely loudly and extremely, it's very solidified for me. I mean, do I want my daughter to die? Obviously not, right? That's not what I'm saying at all.
I know, I
But,
know.
but
I'm
yeah,
gonna share something just to
okay,
sound as crazy as you are, okay? So that you're not alone. I visualize my reactions to the transition of my loved ones. I live those moments, not because I want for those moments to happen, but because I want to see what is the reaction, what's the closest reaction that I want to have? What's the reaction that I want to be closest to? Sorry. Do I want this? Do I want that? So it sounds crazy. I never shared it with anybody. I mean, I shared it with my husband, and it's like, wow, you're always thinking about that. I'm like, well, we don't know when it's gonna be our last breath.
we don't.
And
Absolutely.
you can decide to ignore that completely or to be aware of it and still live your life. It's not that that is an obstacle in my life, but I think about it and it actually brings me back to the present moment, and I say I love you, and I hug, and I make sure that I'm appreciative, and I use this knowing not to live like in fear, oh my goodness, but to
Right.
live in gratitude, to live in the presence, to
And
live
in freedom,
and in
in
freedom, right?
freedom. Yeah.
So so that's something that I do. I visualize now that I am okay with the concept my mom can transition, will transition. Death is unconditional just as much as love. It doesn't matter.
It's inevitable.
So so how do I want to react? I know that there are different things that I can either think about once I'm there
Right.
or start to think about now. And that's why I want to have a conversation or a set of meetings at some point called Let's Talk About Death, because we talk about everything and we don't talk about death, and it's
And
like,
it needs talked about. It's like taking the monster out of the closet and seeing that, oh my gosh, it's not that big of a monster after all. I love the concept of like the death cafes. Have you heard of the death cafes, where people gather and they sit down and they have a drink or a coffee and they talk about death? That's what they do. And I've seen some of that online, and I think it's great that you want to dive into that, because it's so needed, especially in the United States. Like, it
right.
is so taboo here, and grief is so taboo here. And for generations, you've had people that are, put your big girl panties on and buck up, and put on your brave face, put on your brave face. And one of the things that I decided very early on was like, it's way more brave for me to be vulnerable in front of people, and strength. Like, one of the things I'm trying to instill in my daughter now and in my audience is that true strength is shattering and rising and shattering and rising and letting people watch you rise every time you break apart. It's not in pretending that you never broke apart in the first place.
Mm,
And that is a message we need to get out there.
mm,
It's a message our men need to hear because of this toxic masculinity, right? It's a message that our daughters and our sons need to hear. And it's a message that as mothers ourselves, we also need to hear, that there is no brave face. The bravery comes in the doing, it's in the shattering and the rising. And
mm,
I think that's a powerful message, and it coincides with death.
mm,
It coincides with what physical death brings out in our culture. And we are doing it in a very, very dark way. And it's almost, to me now, like a disservice to it, because it
mm.
can be, it's beautiful transcendence. you know, and it's what we all sign up to come here to have.
Mm.
So,
Wow, you received a lot of hearts when you were saying about, when you were just talking now. It's you just touched on, yeah, on many truths. And it's that it's easy for us to want to show the best part and the flawless parts, and it's harder for us to share everything else. It actually takes more courage to be vulnerable. It actually made me think about, do you know what ayahuasca is?
I do. I
Okay.
do. I think,
So
you know, and I think used therapeutically, it's probably a very effective trauma treatment. I will
yeah,
tell you,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, because the drama,
yeah,
the drama of grief, the how grief pans out, comes out, needs to be lived by everybody, by all
absolutely.
of us. And it doesn't matter what situation triggers it. So during an ayahuasca ceremony, what happened is that I was trying to fight that so bad. I wanted to stay, looking at the fire. And I remember I fought it so bad that at some point I screamed. I was not in control of my body anymore. My body was like to the point of a bomb, and just screaming and crying and just letting it all out. And I couldn't even recognize, I couldn't even stop it. And I didn't want anymore. But after that, rebirth. That's the only word that comes to
Exactly.
mind.
And that's exactly what the healing journey is, right? In ayahuasca, you have this huge, profound thing really quickly. So I bet
Right.
it is intense. But the healing journey is, you know, it's that only stretched out, basically. And
Right.
you have to keep letting that carnal, physical, ego self side up and out, because until it has a voice, if you don't give it a voice, it becomes a monster. I mean, if
Mm,
you don't give it a voice, if you don't give the fear a voice, the anger a voice, the guilt a voice, the shame, the pain, it all needs a voice. It all needs an outlet. And if we just put on our brave face and we tamp it all down, it's going to come out another way. It's going to come out as cancer. It's going to come out as psychotic break. It's going to come out as despondence. Whatever it looks like, it's
right.
going to come out. It's going to evolve, you know? So
Mm,
the more we get it out and the more acceptable that comes, I mean, and we're talking about healthy ways of getting it out, right? Like I have clients when we do a trigger class and or a shifting death class, we work with like all the earthly emotions, the lower vibe ego self emotions. So we're working with guilt and shame and anger and fear and all of that, right? So I have them figure out a physical release, whether it be throwing eggs at trees, smashing old dishes with a baseball
mm,
bat, going to throw axes at the axe throwing place, like get it, find an outlet for it to come up and out, you know? And if it looks like laying on the grocery store floor covered in snotty tears because it's pain, that's okay too, you know? It's okay. And that's where some of the freedom comes in, man, because you don't have to pretend anymore that you're okay. That is not healthy, and we do that in our society so much with death
mm,
and grief. And it's that is what terrifies me now. Like that's what terrifies me, is the
mm,
way that we're programmed to do death and grief
mm.
here. So
Yeah, it's scary because,
it
I mean,
is
just think about it. If you scream and shout, nobody knows how to deal with you. Nobody knows how to deal with that because nobody taught them how to. Nobody
exactly.
taught us anything. So we can write question. It's blocked. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. They wanted to ask questions. Maybe on Nikki's page, or message Nikki privately or me privately. We're trying to figure these things out together with you all. So be patient with us, because Nikki says that she's not techie and I am not techie, just plus one. So I'm just Maureen. You can send me questions here, since you were able to figure out how to private message me. Um, so yeah, and then with the ayahuasca, it's like the process is fast, and it's like, oh, you decided to do this. The plant is very clear. The plant is like, you decided to come here. You
Yeah.
decided to take the plant. You decided to go through this, and now you're trying to resist it. Well, that doesn't work that way. I'm
It says,
sorry.
oh, no, you didn't. And
There
then
is
it
no
brings it
way to
on
go
you.
back. No way to go back. No way to go back. As much as, and I know that, one of the things of trauma is like, I wish I could go back to one moment before the accident happened.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's like suffering to the X power. It's
It
like,
is.
it's not going to happen. You can wish for it. It's not going to happen.
Well, and you know, we're just human. You know, we're
Right.
not going to be able to step into a moving train and, you know, in front of a moving train and save anybody, whether we're there or not, period. You know, and we have to surrender to the fact, you know, grief is one of the most powerless places to be. You feel more powerless in that place than probably any other place that I've ever been in darkness, you know. And when I was able to surrender into the fact that that was part of being human, my journey started to change, you know, that I couldn't save Leaf, that it wouldn't have mattered had I been there. And then I started to use that as a tell on when I wasn't being present. Like if I was living and wishing I could go back and say, no, you're not going to the party, then obviously I wasn't present enough and I had just closed the door in his face. Right. So I vowed that I would live not closing the door in his face and I would be present enough to be aware of him, you know, and aware of myself. And I'll tell you what, there's a point on the journey of healing that it stops becoming about your child and it starts becoming about your own growth and intentional expansion for yourself. And there are times that is an even harder part because you don't have your child at the end of that piece of the journey to find. You're actually finding yourself, right? You're going back to remembering who you are. And that's a little less motivating than finding your child in spirit. So, you know, when I turned that corner, it was kind of like, oh, like this is exhausting work because now I have to commit to it for me, not because I'm in pain, just because I want more freedom and surrender. You know, I want to expand more. And so that became a leg of the journey and obviously I'm still on that. I'll be on that until I leave my body because I will be I call them a lifer. I'm a lifer, expander, and seeker now, right? So as are you. So, you know, and it's when you're at the end of the tunnel as the prize, it's a little it's a little bit harder because
Right.
it's not as motivating as finding your kid that's supposedly dead.
Right. Oneness is like, okay, I'm moving towards oneness. It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot.
It does.
and
So absolutely.
it's incredible. Anyways, I want to just stop for 1 second and welcome everybody here that are listening. Thank you so much for being here with Nikki. We are going on a beautiful journey of just flowing, going with the flow. And I wanted to ask if you have any questions or anything that you would like to say or share with us, please feel free to comment and I will make sure to read the comments to Nikki. So I actually took a couple of notes here. I wanted to, while we wait for the questions, to underline another point that you made here. Oh yes, that we talked about this already. Let me see if that's what we talked about this already, but I want to underline it again because I think that it's very important for all of us to understand, to remember, and to remind one another of something that we touch base on, which is there are our thoughts that are very loud and we think that they are true because we are thinking them. So I'm thinking, therefore I am. And then there is the subtle thoughts and feelings that come from spirit or our children and are meant to bring us back home. So an exercise that I used to do that I found somewhere was this, and I feel like saying it because maybe somebody has to listen to it or me, I have to be reminding myself of this exercise of I would take things about my life, 5 things about my life, something that happened like 5 years ago, now, or even just one thing, whatever I had in mind that day, and write down what my fears were saying about it. And then on the other page, write down what my higher self or what creator or what the angels would say about the situation, how they would see it. And I started realizing that there were these two presences in me. The presence I wanted to focus on all the bad, the negative, the fears about such a situation, and and there was also a higher voice that was giving me what ifs. What
Yeah.
if this is okay? What if this is good? What if you're exactly where you're supposed to be? What if this is going to, and
Yeah.
I started seeing that, and I was like, wow, I didn't know that I could tap into those thoughts, into that consciousness.
Yeah. You
And I
know
love
what?
that.
You know how my brain is great at dumbing things down for me when I'm like getting downloads or especially in
Right.
the beginning. Sometimes I would get the visual even in a cartoon, like running through my brain. I'm like, thank God for that. But it occurred to me. So when I was studying like the ego self, right, where the doubt and the loud, because the ego self is always going to be the loud thought. Um, for the most part, right? So it started occurring to me that we've all grown up looking at this cartoon with the devil on one shoulder and the angel on one shoulder. So the loudness is, and the earth paradigm part is the physical part is the ego self, it's the little devil. And then the softer, more subtle messages, the shift in perspective, the higher self voice is the angel. So I literally started when I was doing that, like going through, like, okay, here's this perspective, it's very painful, and here's this one, it's very peaceful. There were times that I would have conversations out loud, like with the little devil on my shoulder and say, no, like you're being very loud and you just need to slow your roll because you don't know what you're talking about. This gal over here is making much more sense and it feels much more peaceful to me. So that's kind of the process that I went through that you were just saying about your exercise. It's this, we were doing the same thing
Yeah.
basically. We
Yeah.
were just doing it in two different ways. And it's super effective. It's so
It's
effective.
unbelievably simple and unbelievably
It
effective.
is.
I don't like the word, I didn't like the word devil. So I remember that I gave it the name Rebecca. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
oh,
Yeah.
Rebecca is here. Rebecca is very loud. It's having
Yeah.
an opinion right now.
We
Yeah.
just did that in one of my classes. We just named our ego self. And
Amazing.
it was funny some of the names that they came up with. But yeah, I had not nice names for my ego self for a very long time. But we did, because when you start seeing that you're not that's not the entirety of who you are, right? Then you can start to shift into your spiritual self. Like it's kind of like, this part and this part. It's your two selves living in this body. And one is here to navigate the earth plane and one is here to navigate the spiritual plane. And they're supposed to make friends. But man, it's hard to get them to make friends sometimes.
Right. Be
you
friend
know?
Rebecca. Yeah. And that's what
Yeah.
I was taught. I was taught like, oh, you don't have to fight Rebecca. You don't have to fight that voice, because if you try, you're in big trouble. Try to get rid of it. You're even in bigger
Yeah.
troubles.
Yeah, because I was very mean to mine at first. I would be like, "You shut up, Leaf's not dead," because it was saying, "Leaf is dead, Leaf is dead, Leaf is dead." And then what I've since learned, like you said, is much like Rebecca, that has been formed through my own wounds and my own moments of contrast where I was hurt, or I was programmed in a certain way, or I was traumatized in a certain way. And it really is a being that it once nurtured and loved, right? It's our shadow self. So it wants to move into the light. It's just pretty persnickety getting it there. And it's very stubborn. So,
Right. It's the worst
you know,
client. It's
oh
the
my
most
God,
stubborn client.
right? It is. Well, it's collectively fed by society's programming too. That doesn't help, but they're like, but society says, so it's got all this backup, yelling at you too. So It can be difficult, definitely.
Yeah.
It can be difficult. And the funny thing about it is, I have clients and they'll say, "Oh, Nikki, taming my ego is so hard." I'm like, I know. And they're like, "Does it ever get any easier?" And I'm like, it gets easier at each level, but it's a sneaky little chameleon, and then it's going to sneak into the next level, and then you're going to have to tame it in a different context. And they're like, "No." I'm like, yeah, even into the spiritual side, right? Because you see all over our community people with spiritual ego, right? And so it's where that earth ego has manifested, put its
Mm,
its costume on to sneak into the spiritual side of things. So
absolutely.
it's a tricky little self.
And there is no way for us to get rid of it as long as we are in our body. It's
No,
just, we're just gonna coexist with it.
yeah, we are. We have to learn to be friends with it. Eckhart Tolle talks about, killing the ego, and I love him, but I don't agree with that. I think he's able to do that because I think he's probably an ascended master, if I have to guess. But most of us common folk are going to just have to learn to tame it and coexist with it and not let it run the show. It just has to get in the passenger seat. That's what I tell people about finding your beloved in spirit. Like, yeah, the doubt is normal. It's coming from your ego self. But the more you tame your ego self and you put it in the passenger seat instead of the driver's seat, the more awareness and more knowing you're going to have. But again, that is a process. And it takes rewiring the neural pathway too, because there's a physiologic connection to this because we are in a body, you
But
know?
now that you're making me think, maybe we have to rewire our brain at some point and start thinking, actually, you don't have to coexist with the ego. You can kill
It's a
it.
rabbit hole, Sylvia. It's a rabbit hole. I know.
And then we're gonna be like, oh, that was just a rewiring of the
That is
brain.
just a rewiring of the brain. I do kind of like my ego self though. In
That's
it,
why we have it. That's why
yeah,
we have
well,
it.
mine's kind of sassy and she has quite a bit of biting wit and sense of humor. So I kind of like that part of my shadow, and I've come to a point now where I can embrace my duality and I can realize that, yeah, I have my ego self and I have my spirit self. And as long as I let my spirit drive most of the time, you know, then I'm okay with that. I can deal with, I can deal with not being love and light all the time.
Right.
I can embrace my duality. But for a long time when I started my spiritual journey, it was confusing for me because I am a sassy person. I cuss like a sailor. I don't mince words. I don't have a lot of pretense or social construct, and that can be very ill received in this day and age. And so it was hard for me because I was seeing all these people that were like love and light, love and light. And I'm like, I don't know how to be all love and light. Like I'm sassy
Right.
and I'm sarcastic, and that's like who part of me is. And I really kind of like that part of me. And so now I've come into a place and I've studied enough that I know that it's okay if I want to embrace my duality. And it's okay as long as I don't let my ego self run the show and get all up in my business and kind of taint it and twist it to be self serving. As long as I can remain altruistic in my spirit and let it drive the bus, and ego can sit in the first seat behind the driver, then I'm okay, you know?
I love that. I love that because it's true. It's like I like my personality as well. That's what we can use here. And I read Yogananda and I love Yogananda, but I don't plan on becoming a yogi. Maybe in 5 years I'm gonna change my mind completely. But when I started as a medium, I remember asking God, please don't send me mothers. I don't want to channel children. Yeah, because I'm like, I'm a truck driver. I also curse. I am also very, sometimes I say a word and it's not the right word because English is not my first language, or I'm hurting somebody. I'm not even realizing it. So, no mothers. And God's plan was completely different. And
Completely.
completely different. And it's like, okay, what is my role here? I don't have a child in spirit. What am I doing here? I'm not Teresa Caputo. I'm not a mom either. I don't understand mother's love. I don't understand child love. So what is my role? And I recently realized what my role is, at least a level of it, which is to give mothers the essence of their children that still exists through me, so that they can start listening to the children
Mhm.
again, because they
Yeah,
are on this journey back home, and their children, now that they're on the other side, are trying to bring their moms back home, because that's what we desire to do. That's what you desire to do. That was the contract. Okay, I'm gonna go back home. That's what I'm doing. I'm going back to think, live, be, embody spirit, even while here. And
yes,
so this child is
exactly.
doing that for me, together
E-
with me.
Exactly. They're bringing heaven to earth. They're allowing us to experience the full expansion while we're still in a body. Truly, I believe that. And you know what else I think part of your purpose is for when to work with mothers is that in the bereaved parent community, we go through a phase where we feel like we can only relate to bereaved parents. Like
Mm,
we can't relate to a widow, and we can't relate to somebody who's never been a mom, and we can't relate to somebody who's never lost a child. So it was very important in my healing when I had people come in to my healing space that had integrity and light, that were not a bereaved parent, because it actually was a shift in perspective for me to see that I could make connections outside of somebody completely relating to my journey, right? That was a big piece of my healing,
wow.
Sylvia, at that point, because you're so broken down and you're so shattered, and so many people don't get it, and you can barely wrap, like I could barely wrap my brain around it to get it. So we go through like this phase where we truly think that we're only going to be able to ever get another bereaved parent, right? And so I love that you work with moms, and that you're not in this life, you're not a bereaved parent, because that actually lends them the perspective that you can relate to them. You do have a purpose with them, even if you're not walking that same path. And
Mm,
I think that's huge.
mm. And it's so interesting that you said that something earlier came from your mom. That's another point that I wanted to underline. When you said, she said, what if you actually prevented his transition, his death, but he transitioned because of the fact that you made a wrong maneuver or a wrong turn.
Yeah, an attempt to save him from the drinking. Yeah,
Right. And my mom said the same thing to me when I was struggling. I'm like, Mom, I have nothing to do with bereaved mothers, like nothing at all. And she was saying, well, you just don't remember whether or not you lived that in previous lifetimes. And she
exactly.
dropped that truth. And I'm like, oh, maybe I didn't have to in this lifetime yet. I don't know if I
Right.
will, in order to start working with them. Because she said, you experience the healing power of mediumship and of what you're doing with others. You experienced it thanks to somebody else previously, and now you give
Yeah.
it importance, and that's why you're doing it. I'm like, okay.
I believe that. I believe that it's highly likely that you have walked this path, and you decided to play a you decided this time you were going to play a supportive role, at least, so far, hopefully. You're like, I'll go and be the supportive role this time to connect the spirit, instead of actually having to do it for my own survival at this point. That makes total sense to me. And if that resonates with you, that's true.
Right.
I could see that totally. That makes completely 100. That makes sense to me. 100%.
And at the same time, I'm,
Absolutely.
I'm thinking that, death is the biggest fear that I had when it comes to my mom. And um, maybe it would have extended to my child, right? Eventually, or I would have
Mhm.
never thought about it. But now it's so interesting because that since I'm expecting, people say congratulations, because we see birth and death in two complete different ways. And
Right.
at the same time, like, okay, he's dying. A part of me is dying forever. I now have to take care of this little human, not knowing, being aware of the fact that it can be taken from me at any moment in time. And I have to
Yeah.
let it go. And I have to do all the process that I am witnessing other people going through.
Yeah.
I'm aware of that. And that's what I think about when people say, oh, congratulations. This is it's a blessing, because I asked for this teacher, but I'm like, okay, this means that I'm ready to learn a bunch of stuff that I have no idea of
how you're going to learn it. You have no idea what the
right,
school's going to look like. And that is
right.
terrifying,
Well,
you
now
know?
it's like an adventure for me, you know. Now
Yeah.
that I have this idea, this understanding, I'm like, you can respond in two different ways, right? You can decide, oh, I still want to hold on the control. That's what ayahuasca taught me. The shaman
Yep.
came, was like, you're learning, you have to let go. And I'm like, what? No, I can't.
It's
It's
so
like, I can't.
painful.
What is it gonna happen if I let go? And at
Yeah.
the same time, or deciding to, well, I'm gonna take it as an adventure so that if things go well, I'm happy. If things don't go well, there's still a lesson. I mean, resisting doesn't really
Absolutely. It
work.
resistance is pain. Resistance is pain. You know, it is. And the fact of the matter is we have to have resistance to learn how to let go of it.
Right?
So, you know, it's a double-edged sword. The whole thing is it's all a catch-22. It's all simple yet
Just,
complex, you
right,
know.
right. It's the
So
duality, the world of
it is the
duality.
duality. It is. It absolutely is. And it can be a little crazy making, I will tell you.
Yeah, it gets pretty creepy. Um and then you know what's very funny, so interesting, because I was like, I always want to move forward. I always want to expand, right? I always want to, but expanding entails learning how to do lives or reaching out to people or okay,
Yeah.
starting the interview process in a podcast or going and start a course or whatever. So I remember that a few months ago, I was like, okay, I'm ready for the next step. And I remember I was here in the room in front of my computer and I was like, okay, guys, I know that you're here, you know, like very informal. I know that you're here. What am I supposed to do? Just tell me. And the word Facebook Live came to mind. I was like, no, besides that, what else? What else? Another thing. I don't want to do that now. YouTube videos. No, no, something else. Just tell me what I'm supposed to do and I'll do it. And they were like, dude, girl,
We're
we're telling
trying
you.
to tell you. Well, and it's funny too, because, and I didn't realize this was live, and somebody had said to me, Nikki, you need to start doing Facebook Lives. And I'm like, oh no, like, no, 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 I'm not near techie enough. There's no way I can pull that off. And God only knows what I will say on a live. And then, so would you literally, what, 4 minutes before you're like, no, it's a live. And I'm like, oh, okay, we're doing this.
Right,
So,
right,
no, I'm like, all right, well, that was a spirit message for me, apparently, you know.
right, right. There
So,
is the surrender there as well, because I was just like you, like I make so many mistakes in general. If you're doing a video, you can cut them off, whatever. On a live, it's like it's there, it's out there,
it's
that's
out
it.
there. It
Your
doesn't,
flaws
yeah,
are in front of everybody.
it's total vulnerability, you know. And when you're extremely authentic, that can be a little daunting, like, you know. But I haven't dropped the F bomb yet. So I'm really proud of myself because it's generally one of my favorite words.
This is amazing. We have been here for almost 2 hours, and I notice it just because the computer's like battery is low.
Yeah. Um,
This is awesome.
yeah, and I mean, we can do it again. And did I freeze? Am I frozen? I
No,
can't think.
you're good. You're
Uh,
good.
you know, and anytime, because it's been awesome. It's been awesome. I do.
Yeah.
Do you care if I talk about my holiday program real
No,
quick?
you do have to talk about it because I also wanted to welcome a few more people on, and thank you for staying here. And absolutely, go ahead, Nikki, and talk about what is happening during the holiday.
This will be my third year doing this program. It's an annual program that I run, and initially I started it because I remember my first 2 years of holidays, and they were dark and hard. And even though I had like my healing community to some degree at that point, it wasn't the same. And so what I did in those first 2 years is I learned ways to bring Leaf into our holidays through physical stuff as well as my connection to him. Um, and I thought, what a great thing if I offered this to other people. So what I do is this year we're going to do a 6-week program. It is November 21st through January 2nd. So we walk through Thanksgiving and Christmas, Am I frozen? Am I still here? Okay. We walk through Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. And this year I'm doing a mediumship showcase. So of that 6 weeks, there will be a gallery reading, which is an open audience reading, right? With one medium per 6 weeks. Then there will be weekly coaching with me, where we'll have a theme for each coaching. We'll be bringing in different activities to do for the kids, with the kids, bringing them in and connecting to um, figure out what dish they want made for Christmas, or what present they want bought. We'll be taking them shopping with us. We'll also be having Reiki sessions, um, energy healing sessions, and giveaways and drawings and on all kinds of activities. So instead of dreading the holidays without your child in spirit or your spouse in spirit, because it's open to all bereaved people, or your cousin or your best friend or whoever, we come together with both paradigms, the earth side and the spirit side, and we celebrate those holidays together as a community. And the healing energy, the collective energy in this space is amazing. So you would think, oh my gosh, it's like a grief program, right? It's gonna be very sad and dark, and it's not. There's so much light, and there's so much healing, and there's so much laughter and so much connection that it's such a huge lifeline for a lot of people. And I really enjoy it too. I'm whether I'm doing the program or not, Leaf is always a part of our whatever we're doing. So um, but being able to extend that out to other people who think that they're going to have to suffer through the loss over the holidays it's huge. So it's a really great program. I'm excited for it this year. This is the first year we've done a mediumship showcase. We've got some great mediums that are gonna razzle dazzle us with some messages, and then everybody also gets a free 30-minute reading with one of the mediums as well. So it's just kind of like it's a spirit filled Christmas, I guess you could say. So if people are interested in enrolling, I do have enrollment up. What it looks like is I put everybody in like a private Facebook group, and we do all of our activities in there. And then I set up the Zooms, and we do Zooms. And I've made the gallery readings, because I do have overseas clients. I've made it where if you're in the UK, if you're in Australia, you're going to be able to attend those things live. And then, of course, everything is also recorded, so you can actually permanently download all of the coaching, all of everything, and you can use that as resource tools throughout the year when you hit those dark spots as well. So if anybody's interested in enrolling in that, they can message me on my personal Facebook page, which is Nikki Blevins Elliott, or my business page, which is On Grief Guidance and Coaching Services. If you're in Healing Warrior Parents, or Sylvia knows how to find me. If you're supposed to be there and you want to be there, Spirit will get you there. So that's what it is. It is there is divine compensation. So it is $380 for the whole program, which I'm told is very good pricing. So that's how much it is. And then Warrior Parents United, if you're a bereaved parent, the 501c3 that I founded, I'm not on the board, so I don't deal with the financial part of that at all, but they do offer scholarships for different things as well. So if you're in financial need for any kind of memorial, burial costs, EMDR therapies, shamanic therapies, different medium readings, classes, the holiday program, you can always reach out to Warrior Parents United. And they have a website as well, and ask for financial assistance as well if that's something that's needed. So
That's
yeah.
incredible. Wow. If all salesmen were as passionate as you are about what you do, they would make more sales.
It's for me, it is. I realized very early on in my journey that I befriended a gal that was a bereaved parent. She was a newly bereaved parent, and I was about 2 months ahead of her. And we were kind of just clinging to each other. And I said, just keep holding on, just keep holding on. I think it's going to get better. We're just going to keep doing We're going to keep searching. We're going to keep seeking. And she crossed herself. And so it hit me really hard. And I was like, wow, like the ideation that I've had to die can become very real at any given moment. I since now understand that that was obviously an exit point, or she wouldn't have been allowed to leave her body. But at that point, it was like, whoa, like this really is life or death that I'm clinging to here. And when I realized that, and then I looked around and I saw no hope hardly anywhere, because I was reaching out to bereaved parents that I'd known for years, and most of them were like, it's just always kind of there, Nikki, under the surface. And I'm like, you're basically telling me I'm going to live a nightmare of a life sentence now. I can't accept that. And so I decided, and Leaf drugged me into it kicking and screaming some of the way, but it was like, we have to let people know that this can get better if they choose it to, and if they allow it to. It can. It doesn't have to be a life sentence. And that will always, always, always be the basis of the work that I do, because it's
And it
important.
transpires.
Yeah.
It transpires. I mean, I can feel it. And I feel like you need to give that choice to those that choose to actually grieve it differently, do it differently, live it differently.
Absolutely. And it is a choice. It's completely, and I'm not here to drag everybody kicking and screaming into it, but I'll definitely be here to hold the hands that want to walk into it. Absolutely. Or really crawl into it, because it's at the beginning, that's all you can do some days. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Thank you so much, Nikki. And yeah, I'm looking forward to collaborate with you on something. I feel like it's gonna happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'll be lovely.
I don't know what spirit has in store for us, but we'll see, because we definitely are on the same wavelength when it comes to the potential that we have as humans, the superpowers that we have as humans, and the intention of doing something for those that really choose to do things differently, and believing in ourselves enough to make that happen, knowing that spirit is accompanying us.
And I love that you use the word superpowers, because I always say our kids are now invisible with superpowers, and Leaf has given me some of my own superpowers now. So
Right.
I love that you use that word. That's exactly what it is.
Wow. I'm so grateful that we made this happen, and this was long, but this was so needed, so necessary, so uplifting for me, and I know for all those that are going to be listening. I'm going to have to cut it short because I have 8% remaining, and I don't want for this to I don't have the charger here with me. But thank you all so much. Thank you, Nikki. Do you have one last thing that you want to say before closing?
Just keep going. Just keep going. Even through the darkness of it, just keep going, keep going, keep going. It's going to get better if you allow it to. And there are many, many, many of us out there that are willing to walk beside you in it. And your kids are near. They have not gone anywhere. They have not gone anywhere. And thank you, Sylvia, for having me on. What a great discussion. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. So
Love
thank
it
you.
too.
I'm completely
Thank you.
honored.
Same, Nikki. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night. And I'll see you soon, all of you. Okay.
Bye.